welcome alternative views. We welcome input. We welcome dissenting opinion. This
dissent is not unusual in the State Department. What is unusual is the scale of it. 51 diplomats all involved in Syria policy. That is something I've not seen before.
State Department spokesman John Kirby and retired four-star General Jack Keane with very different reactions today to the news that 51 U.S. diplomats have signed a memo urging the U.S. to intervene in the Syrian civil war. Let's bring in our panel. Mercedes Schlapp, columnist for the Washington Times. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. So, Mercedes, what do you make of this memo signed, as we say, by 51 State Department officers critical of President Obama's policy towards Syria?
Well, it shows that President Obama's strategy is clearly one of hesitation towards Syria. We know that it has been a humanitarian failure, and the mere fact that you're seeing this widespread number of State Department officials basically saying, look, we don't agree. We need tougher military action. We know that the diplomatic accords are not working, and that Russia and that Syria and that Iran are calling the shots. I mean, this is an embarrassment for the Obama administration.
So what they're basically saying, these officers, is we need some military action to put pressure on Assad to come to the negotiating table, because right now he's winning and has no reason to settle with the rebels.
That's right, and let's think about it. In 2011, President Obama said it's time for Assad to step aside. Assad is going to be ruling and being in power longer than President Obama. President Obama will leave, and Assad will still be the dictator of Syria, which, what have we seen? We've seen over 200,000 Syrians killed, over 7.6 million Syrians who have been displaced. I mean, this is a tragedy, and the fact is that when you have Russia in charge, when you have Syria in charge, and Iran, it really is about the U.S. Not only just leading from behind, but the fact that the strategy is clearly not working, and the State Department is making note of it.
But, A.B., just to be clear, what these State Department officials are calling for are not more airstrikes against ISIS. They're calling for more airstrikes against the regime of the Syrian president.
Right, and President Obama is well aware that this dissent has been growing at the State Department. When his Secretary of State left, she too said that she would have supported earlier arming of the rebels and possibly a no-fly zone. She was calling for something stronger. He obviously relented on the red line in 2013. Even Kerry pointed to a report in 2013 basically arguing that if he relented on that it would be an encouragement to Assad to use chemical weapons one more time, if not more than that. So this dissent is not new. As General King points out, it's the number. But it's that countries like the UAE and the Saudis are watching them fight ISIS while the Russians help Assad basically decimate the country. We're not helping the rebels who are fighting Assad. We're trying to find ISIS here and there. It's ineffective, and the rebels are losing the battle against Assad. And that's what these people are saying, that he came to the negotiating table and he laughed it off.
But, Charles, this is where it becomes a kind of Rubik's Cube, because look at our national interest. Does trying to shake Assad, trying to topple him, trying to create a new government in Syria, does that help or hurt in our fight against ISIS?
Well, look, that can be argued either way. But I think what cannot be argued is the fact that the United States accepting the Obama doctrine that Syria is a no-go zone, that the U.S. under him has essentially declared we will not do anything, and engaging only in diplomacy, which here you have diplomats saying cannot work unless you have an advantage on the field, that doctrine simply has created a vacuum into which Russia has now entered, reappearing in the Middle East for the first time in half a century, and which Iran and Hezbollah have now occupied, all of which are very strongly against U.S. national interest. Look, there's not going to be a change in policy. Obama is not going to repudiate his own doctrine and start a whole new adventure with 6 months left to go. But I think the fact, it's not just the number of diplomats who came out against it. It's the fact that it's on the front page of the major newspapers, that it was leaked, that it was meant to be seen. And even more important is the fact that these are diplomats demanding military action and essentially retroactively criticizing very heavily Obama's decision years ago when this was feasible to intervene in some way. 5 years ago, the Free Syrian Army was a working proposition. ISIS was still a minor element in the conflict, attacking the Assad forces, weakening the regime and getting rid of it would not have been a boon to ISIS the way it is now. So I think the policy at this point is impractical. But the fact that you get diplomats whose life is negotiation and not the use of force urging this, even at a late date when it probably is not practical, indicates how terrible a mistake Obama made when he had the chance to do something and did nothing.
Meanwhile, there was a development next door in Iraq, and that is that Iraqi forces, with the support of U.S. airstrikes, have finally pushed into the city of Fallujah, pushing back ISIS, not taken over the city, but at least moved into the city center. How significant is that, Charles?
It's very important because that was the first city that ISIS entered. It's sort of the key to Anbar. It means the major population center still controlled by ISIS is Mosul, which will be a very difficult proposition. But Mosul has the one advantage. It's not almost entirely Sunni. It's a mixed population. So there should be more internal support. The squeezing in Iraq has been working, but very slowly. In the end, though, the jackpot, the headquarters, the key to defeating ISIS is Raqqa, and so far we've done nothing.
Mercedes?
Well, I think we're going to also analyze whether the surge, the fact that President Obama took out the troops and just decided to move forward on just a smaller group of a more elite special forces in Iraq, if that's really going to work. And what we're seeing is two different scripts being written by the administration. You have the president saying we're making major progress on our fight against ISIS, and then you had CIA Director John Brennan coming out and saying, wait a second here, their expansion is still there. They have still have a capacity in spreading throughout the world. So I think that it becomes a challenge for the president. While this is a victory that we have seen in Iraq today, it is one step forward and one step back, because at the same time what we're seeing is that ISIS is still very much a threat, very much an established organization in the terrorist realm.
And briefly, A.B., I mean, the difference just this week between Obama saying that we're making gains against ISIS and Brennan, the CIA director, saying, yeah, we're making some gains, but in a way it's making it even more dangerous and increasing its global ambitions, was pretty striking.
Yeah, they're not on the same page. People in his administration are frustrated with the policy, and I agree with Charles. It is probably too late. If you talk to the people who are the most expert on this, they say ISIS has permeated Iraq so much and Syria so much that it's probably too late to turn back the tide. Fallujah's been held for 2.5 years. So it's possible to make incremental gains, but in the long term, probably not.